The fluorescent lights in Boston General Hospital's emergency department had been flickering for 3 days straight. Nobody had time to call maintenance. Nobody had time for anything except the endless stream of patients that poured through the automatic doors at all hours. Nurse Aria Chen had been on her feet for 11 hours straight when the gunshot victim arrived. GSW to the abdomen, massive blood loss, BP dropping fast. The paramedic's voice cut through the organized chaos of the ER. Found him in an alley in the North End. No ID. Unresponsive at the scene but came to in the ambulance. Combative. Wouldn't tell us anything. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Aria looked up from the suture tray she'd been preparing and felt her stomach drop. The man on the gurney was massive, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders and a presence that commanded attention even while bleeding out. His expensive suit was soaked through with blood. His dark hair was matted with sweat, and his eyes, when they fixed on her, were the most striking shade of gray she'd ever seen. Sharp, intelligent, and absolutely furious. Room 4. Dr. Sarah Martinez barked, already moving. Aria, you're with me. Everyone else, clear the board. This is priority 1. Aria grabbed the crash cart and followed, her mind already running through protocols. Gunshot wounds were common enough in this part of Boston, but something about this patient felt different. The way the paramedics had handled him with unusual caution. The way security had materialized from nowhere to flank the trauma room doors. Inside room 4, organized chaos erupted. Dr. Martinez was calling for units of blood. Another nurse was cutting away the remains of what had probably been a $3,000 suit. Aria moved to establish 4 access, her hands steady despite the intensity of the situation. The man's eyes tracked her movements. Even in shock, even with a bullet in his abdomen and his life draining away, he was watching everything. Cataloging. Assessing. Sir, I need you to stay still, Aria said firmly, trying to find a vein in his arm. His forearms were corded with muscle, marked with old scars that spoke of a violent life. We're trying to help you. Don't, he ground out, his voice a low rasp. His hand shot up, catching her wrist with surprising strength for someone who should be unconscious by now. Don't touch me. You have a bullet in your abdomen. Aria met his eyes directly, unflinching. If we don't operate immediately, you'll die. So you can either let go of my wrist, or you can bleed out on this table while trying to be tough. Your choice. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise, maybe. He released her wrist. Good, Aria said, going back to work. Now hold still. She got the 4 line in on the first try, already moving to prep for blood transfusion. Dr. Martinez was doing a rapid assessment, her experienced hands probing carefully. Bullet still in there, Dr. Martinez announced. Possible liver involvement. We need to get him to surgery now. Or 3 is ready, someone called from the hallway. Wait. The man's voice was stronger now, fueled by adrenaline and something that looked like sheer force of will. No police. You call police, people die. Dr. Martinez exchanged glances with Aria. They were legally required to report gunshot wounds. But the way he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, made something cold slide down Aria's spine. Sir, we have to. People you care about, he continued, his eyes fixed on Aria specifically. You call police. This doesn't end with me. Are you threatening my staff? Dr. Martinez's voice went hard. Warning. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. There's a difference. Aria should have been terrified. Should have called security, called the police, done everything by the book. Instead, she found herself leaning closer, lowering her voice. Who shot you? Doesn't matter. It matters if they're coming here to finish the job. His eyes widened slightly, as if her quick understanding surprised him. They won't. Not here. Too public. But they'll come eventually. Yes. The honesty of that single word hit her harder than any threat could have. This man, whoever he was telling her the truth. Not trying to manipulate or deceive. Just stating facts. We need to move him now, Dr. Martinez insisted. He's lost too much blood. Aria, prep for transfusion during transport. The next 2 hours were a blur of surgical precision and controlled chaos. Aria assisted in the OR, handing instruments, monitoring vitals, watching as Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen, the trauma surgeon, worked to repair the damage. The bullet had nicked the liver but missed major vessels by millimeters. Lucky, everyone kept saying. He was so lucky. But Aria, watching the man's face even while he was under anesthesia, didn't think luck had anything to do with it. This was someone who'd survived worse. Someone who'd been hurt before and kept going through sheer stubbornness. By 3 a.m, he was stable. Moved to a private room in the ICU. Security posted at the door, though Aria noticed they weren't hospital security. These men wore expensive suits and earpieces and carried themselves like soldiers. She should have gone home. Her shift had ended 4 hours ago. But something kept her there, checking on him one more time before she left. The ICU was quiet, machines beeping in steady rhythms. Aria checked his chart first. Vitals stable. Blood pressure improving. Transfusion complete. Everything by the book. Then she made the mistake of looking at him. Even unconscious, even pale from blood loss, he was striking. Strong features. A jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. Dark hair that had been cleaned and now fell across his forehead. And those scars, so many scars, that spoke of a life she couldn't imagine. Who are you? She thought, studying his face. What kind of life leaves marks like these? His eyes opened. Aria jumped, her hand flying to her chest. His eyes were clearer now, more focused. The gray had darkened to almost charcoal in the dim lighting. You're supposed to be sedated, she said, recovering her composure. I don't like being sedated. You just had surgery. You need rest. I need to know who you are. His voice was still rough, but stronger. The nurse who told me to stop being tough. Despite everything, Aria felt her lips twitch. Aria Chen. I'm one of the ER nurses. You stayed late. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. I wanted to make sure you were stable. Why? Good question. Why did she care about this man who'd threatened them, who clearly lived a violent life, who was probably involved in things she didn't want to know about? Because that's my job, she said finally. I don't get to pick and choose who deserves help. He studied her for a long moment, those gray eyes reading things she wasn't saying. That's not the only reason. No, she admitted. You scared me earlier. That threat about people I care about. I needed to see that you were actually human, not just some monster. And what's your verdict? Aria considered lying, offering some placating response. Instead, she told the truth. I think you're dangerous. I think you've done things I don't want to know about. But I also think you were terrified in that ER, and you covered it with anger because that's all you know how to do. Silence. Long enough that Aria wondered if she'd overstepped, said too much, revealed that she'd seen past his defenses to something vulnerable underneath. Smart, he said finally, and brave, dangerous combination. I should go. You need rest. Aria! The way he said her name made her pause at the door. Thank you. For not calling the police. For understanding. I didn't do it for you, she said quietly. I did it because I believe everyone deserves a chance to survive. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding harder than it should. This was a mistake, she told herself. Getting involved, even tangentially, with whatever this man represented. She should request a different assignment, make sure she never saw him again. But the next night, when she came back for her shift, the first thing she did was check the ICU board. He was still there. Room 412. Stable condition. And despite every warning bell in her head, Aria felt relief. Over the next 3 days, a pattern emerged. Aria would check on him during her rounds, spending maybe 5 minutes each time. They'd talk carefully. He never offered his name. She never asked. They discussed safe topics. The hospital food, which he refused to eat, the news playing on his room's television, her terrible commute from Dorchester. He was intelligent, she discovered, observant in ways that suggested a mind constantly analyzing, processing, planning. He noticed when she was tired, when her feet hurt from too many hours standing, when she was frustrated with hospital bureaucracy. And he made her laugh. Small moments of dark humor that caught her off guard. Like when he'd rated the hospital gown's dignity level as -3, or when he'd asked if the questionable meat in the meal tray was punishment for being a difficult patient. Aria found herself looking forward to those 5-minute conversations. Found herself thinking about him during quiet moments in her shift. Found herself wondering about the man beneath the scars and secrets. On the 4th day, Dr. Martinez pulled her aside. "That patient in 412, Dr. Martinez said carefully. "You've been spending extra time with him." Aria's stomach clenched. "Just monitoring his recovery. He's a complex case." "Aria!" Dr. Martinez's expression was concerned, not judgmental. "I've been a trauma surgeon for 15 years. I know the signs of someone involved in organized crime. That man is dangerous." "I know. Do you? Because the way you look at him suggests you're seeing something else." "I'm just doing my job." "Your job doesn't require you to visit him on your breaks. Your job doesn't require you to bring him actual food because he won't eat the hospital meals." Dr. Martinez's voice softened. "I'm saying this as your friend, not just your supervisor. Be careful. Men like him don't live in the same world we do. Getting involved never ends well." Aria knew she was right. Knew every word was true and sensible and exactly what she should listen to. But that night, when she brought him a sandwich from the deli across the street, turkey and Swiss with mustard, the way he'd mentioned liking once, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. "You shouldn't have done this," he said, accepting the sandwich. But his eyes held something warm, something grateful. "Hospital food is terrible. You need actual nutrition to heal." "That's your excuse." "That's my excuse." He ate slowly, methodically. Aria watched him, noticing how even eating was calculated. Never fully relaxed. Never truly vulnerable. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. "Your real name." He paused mid-bite. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I've been taking care of you for 4 days and calling you the patient in 412 in my head feels wrong. Maybe it's safer if you don't know." "Maybe," Aria agreed. "But I'm asking anyway." He studied her for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Finally, he said, "Dante. Dante Moretti." The name hit her like a physical blow. She'd lived in Boston long enough to know that name, to understand what it meant. The Moretti family wasn't just involved in organized crime, they practically ran the city's underworld. And Dante Moretti was the eldest son, the heir, the man who would eventually control it all. "You recognize it," Dante observed, watching her reaction carefully. "Yes. And now you're going to leave and never come back." Aria should have. Every rational part of her brain screamed to walk away, request a transfer, forget she'd ever met this man. Instead, she sat down in the chair beside his bed. "Tell me what happened," she said quietly. "Who shot you and why?" "Aria, I'm not asking as a nurse. I'm asking as someone who wants to understand. You don't have to tell me, but I'm here if you want to." Dante was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of years of violence and responsibility, "There's a territory dispute. Russian organization trying to move into areas my family controls. 3 nights ago, I met with their representative. Negotiations went badly. One of their soldiers thought he could end the dispute by ending me." He touched his abdomen gently. Obviously, he missed the important parts. "You could have died, but I didn't." His gray eyes met hers. "Because you saved my life. Dr. Martinez saved your life. I just assisted. You stabilized me in that ER. You got the 4-line in when I was being difficult. You convinced me to trust you." His voice dropped lower. "You chose to not call the police, even though it put you at risk. That was you, Aria. You saved me." The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. This wasn't simple gratitude. This was something else, something deeper and more complicated. "I should go," Aria said, standing abruptly. "Visiting hours are over." "Aria!" He caught her hand, his grip gentle despite the strength she knew resided there. "I need to tell you something. The people who shot me, they know I survived. They know I'm here. And they're smart enough to realize that the medical staff who saved me might have information they want." Ice flooded her veins. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying you might be. I've had security watching the hospital, your commute, your apartment building. Discreetly. But if anything seems off, if anyone approaches you asking questions about me, you need to call this number immediately." He pulled a card from somewhere, How he had that when he'd arrived with nothing. She didn't want to know. And pressed it into her palm. Day or night. Any reason. You call, and help will come. Aria looked at the card. Simple black with a single phone number embossed in silver. No name, no explanation. This is insane, she whispered. I'm just a nurse who did her job. Why would anyone come after me? Because in my world, information is power. And you have information about me, my condition, my recovery timeline, my vulnerabilities. That makes you valuable. His thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch sending electricity up her arm. I won't let anyone hurt you because you chose to help me. That's my promise. She should have been terrified, should have run from the room and requested a transfer to a different hospital in a different city. Instead, she found herself asking, when are you being discharged? Tomorrow morning. Against medical advice, obviously. But I can't stay here any longer. It's too exposed. You need at least another week of recovery. I'll have private doctors. Of course he would. Men like Dante Moretti had private everything. Aria. He still held her hand, his gray eyes intense. I know this is complicated. I know I've dragged you into something dangerous just by existing in your ER that night. But I need you to understand something. From the moment you told me to stop being tough and let you help me, something changed. You looked at me and saw a person, not a monster or a threat or a reputation. Do you know how rare that is? I'm sure plenty of people. No. His voice was firm. Everyone who looks at me sees the Moretti name first. Sees power or danger or an opportunity to exploit. You saw someone who needed help and gave it without hesitation, without judgment. That means something. That means everything. Aria's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was happening too fast, becoming too much. She needed distance, needed perspective, needed to think clearly. I have to go, she said, gently pulling her hand free. Get some rest. Actually rest. And please, for once, listen to your doctors. Only if you promise to take care of yourself. Keep that card with you. Stay aware of your surroundings. And Aria? He waited until she looked back at him. Thank you. For everything. She left without responding, her mind spinning. In the locker room, she stared at the black card, memorizing the number even as she told herself she'd never use it. That night, walking to her car in the hospital's parking garage, Aria felt the weight of eyes watching her. She looked around but saw no one. Just shadows and the echo of her footsteps on concrete. She drove home carefully, checking her mirrors constantly. Her apartment building in Dorchester looked the same as always, worn but safe, familiar. But as she climbed the stairs to her third-floor unit, that feeling of being watched intensified. Inside her apartment, Aria locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and stood in the darkness for a long moment, listening. Nothing seemed disturbed. Everything was exactly as she'd left it that morning. But something felt different. Wrong. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, instinct or stupidity, made her swipe to accept. Miss Chen. The voice was male, accented Russian. We need to talk about your patient. The man you saved 4 nights ago. Aria's hand tightened on the phone. I don't discuss patients. HIPAA regulations. HIPAA. The man laughed, the sound cold and amused. That's sweet. Let me be clear, Miss Chen. We know you saved Dante Moretti's life. We know you've been visiting him daily. We know you brought him food from the deli across from the hospital, turkey and Swiss with mustard. We know everything. Terror flooded through her, sharp and paralyzing. What do you want? Information. How is he recovering? When will he be discharged? What are his vulnerabilities? I can't. You can. And you will. Because if you don't, we'll visit your mother. Aria Chen, living alone in that nice assisted living facility in Quincy. Wouldn't want anything to happen to her. Aria's vision went white at the edges. Her mother. They were threatening her mother. Don't, she whispered. Please don't touch her. Then give us what we want. Details about Moretti's condition. Or we'll get our information another way, and your mother will pay the price. The line went dead. Aria stood frozen in her dark apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, every muscle locked with fear. They knew about her mother. They'd been watching her that closely. With shaking hands, she pulled out the black card, stared at the silver number embossed on its surface. Day or night, any reason. She dialed. It rang once before someone answered. Not Dante's voice, but someone else. Professional alert. Yes. My name is Aria Chen. I need to speak with Dante Moretti. Now. Please. They're threatening my mother. Hold. Silence. 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours. Then, Aria. Dante's voice rough but focused. What happened? She told him everything. The call, the threats, the specific knowledge they had about her movements and her mother. When she finished, Dante was quiet for one beat. Then, give me your mother's exact address. Right now. She rattled it off, her voice shaking. Done. I have people there already. Your mother is safe. No one will touch her. How can you? Because I've had security on her since the day after you saved my life. I told you, Aria. Information is power. I knew they might come after you. I've been preparing for it. Relief crashed through her so forcefully her knees buckled. She sank onto her couch, phone still pressed to her ear. What do I do? She whispered. They want information about you. About your recovery. They said they'll hurt my mother if I don't comply. You're not going to comply. You're going to pack a bag with essentials for 3 days. In 10 minutes, a car will arrive at your building. Black SUV, license plate November Delta 73. The driver's name is Marcus. You're going to get in that car, and he's going to bring you somewhere safe. I can't just leave. I have work tomorrow. I have, Aria. His voice was gentle but firm. They made a threat against your life and your mother's life. You can't go back to your normal routine. Not until this is handled. Handled how? Let me worry about that. Right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Every logical part of her brain screamed no. Screamed that trusting a crime lord was the worst possible decision. But she thought about her mother, alone and vulnerable. Thought about the coldness in that Russian voice. Thought about Dante's gray eyes and the way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare. Yes, she whispered. I trust you. Good. Pack your bag. Marcus will be there in 8 minutes now. And Aria, you're safe. I promise you that. No one touches you or your mother. Not while I'm alive. The call ended. Aria sat in the darkness for one more moment, processing everything that had just happened in the span of 5 minutes. Then she moved, throwing clothes into a duffel bag, grabbing her laptop, her medications, the photo of her mother she kept on her nightstand. Essential documents from the file folder in her closet. Her hands shook the entire time, but she kept moving, kept packing, kept functioning despite the terror. 7 minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk black SUV. November Delta 73. Marcus. I'm downstairs. Asterisk Aria looked around her apartment one more time. At the life she built carefully over the past 3 years. The nursing school loans she was still paying off. The secondhand furniture she'd found at thrift stores. The small, safe existence she'd carved out after years of instability. All of it about to change because she'd chosen to save the life of a man she should have let die. She grabbed her bag and left, locking the door behind her with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Outside, the black SUV waited exactly as promised. A man built like a wall stood beside the rear door, his eyes scanning the street constantly. Miss Chen. His voice was deep professional. I'm Marcus. Mr. Moretti sent me to ensure your safety. Where are we going? Somewhere secure. Mr. Moretti will explain everything when we arrive. Aria climbed into the back seat. The door closed with a heavy, final sound. As they pulled away from her building, she watched her street recede through tinted windows. She was leaving her life behind to put herself in the hands of one of Boston's most dangerous men. And despite everything, despite the fear and the threats and the absolute insanity of the situation, she knew with strange certainty that she'd made the right choice. Because Dante Moretti had promised she'd be safe. And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. The drive through Boston's nighttime streets felt surreal. Aria watched familiar landmarks pass by. The harbor, downtown's glittering towers, the North End's narrow streets, all transformed by darkness and fear into something foreign. Marcus drove with professional efficiency, taking turns that seemed random but were clearly calculated. Losing any potential tail, she realized. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since that phone call. "How's my mother?" she asked finally, unable to stay silent any longer. "Secure," Marcus replied, his eyes never leaving the road. Mr. Moretti sent his best team. 4 men positioned around the facility, 2 inside posing as maintenance staff. "Your mother doesn't know they're there, but she's completely protected." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." They drove for another 20 minutes before turning onto a tree-lined street in Beacon Hill. Old money, Aria thought, looking at the elegant brownstones and gas lamps. This was where Boston's elite lived, where history and wealth created insulation from the rest of the city. Marcus pulled up to a 4-story brownstone that managed to be both beautiful and understated. Warm light glowed from tall windows. A garden that probably looked spectacular in daylight was now just shadows and shapes. "This is Mr. Moretti's private residence," Marcus explained, opening her door. "You'll be staying in the guest suite on the 3rd floor. The building has comprehensive security. You're safe here." Aria climbed out, her duffel bag feeling impossibly heavy. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked dark hair. "Miss Chen," the woman said warmly. "I'm Rosa. I manage Mr. Moretti's household. Please come in." The interior took Aria's breath away. Hardwood floors gleamed under soft lighting. Original art hung on cream-colored walls. A curved staircase swept upward, elegant and inviting. But what struck her most was how it felt lived in, comfortable. This wasn't a showpiece. This was a home. "Mr. Moretti is in his study," Rosa said, taking Aria's bag. "He asked that you join him when you arrived. But first, would you like some tea? Coffee? You look like you've had quite a shock." "Tea would be wonderful," Aria admitted. "Thank you." Rosa disappeared toward what was presumably the kitchen. Marcus had already vanished, leaving Aria standing in the foyer alone, processing the impossibility of her situation. "Aria!" She turned. Dante stood in a doorway to her left, leaning heavily against the frame. He'd been discharged only this morning, she remembered. He should be resting, not standing, not carrying the weight she could see in his expression. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that showed the breadth of his shoulders. His color was better than in the hospital, but she could see the careful way he held himself, protecting his healing wound. "You shouldn't be up," she said automatically, her nurse training overriding everything else. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "There's the woman who told me to stop being tough. I'm serious. You had major abdominal surgery 4 days ago. You need rest." "I'll rest when you're settled and safe." He straightened with visible effort. "Come. We need to talk." His study was masculine but warm. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with volumes in multiple languages. A massive desk dominated the space, papers organized in neat stacks. But what caught Aria's attention was the wall of screens behind the desk, showing various security camera feeds. "You can see my apartment building," she said, spotting the familiar entrance on one screen. "And the hospital. And your mother's facility. And 17 other locations relevant to your safety." Dante moved to his desk, lowering himself into the chair with careful control. "Sit, please. You're making me nervous," standing there looking ready to bolt. Aria sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I'm not going to bolt." "No. Most people would after getting a death threat and being driven to a crime lord's house in the middle of the night." "I'm not most people." "No." His gray eyes held hers. "You're absolutely not." Rosa appeared with tea, setting down a tray with a pot, cups, and small cookies before disappearing again with silent efficiency. "Your mother is truly safe," Dante said once they were alone. "I've had security on her since the day after you saved my life. The Russians making their move tonight just accelerated protocols that were already in place." "Why would you do that? You didn't even know me." "I knew you saved my life. I knew I'd put you at risk by surviving in your ER. And I knew the Russians would eventually figure out who'd treated me." He poured tea with steady hands. "In my world, Aria, you protect the people who help you. It's not optional. It's survival." "Your world." Aria accepted the cup he offered. "I know who you are now. The Moretti family. And does that change how you see me?" She considered lying, offering some comfortable response. Instead, she told the truth. It explains a lot. The scars, the guards, the way you assess threats even while bleeding out. But no, it doesn't change how I see you. How do you see me? As someone who was terrified in that ER and covered it with anger. As someone who says thank you for a sandwich like it's the greatest gift they've ever received. As someone who's been hurt so many times they've stopped trusting anyone. She met his eyes. As someone who's dangerous but not evil. There's a difference. Silence stretched between them. Dante's expression had shifted to something unreadable, something intense. You see too much, he said finally. Or maybe you let me see more than you intended. A knock interrupted whatever he might have said next. A man entered without waiting for permission. Tall, dark-haired, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. The Russian safe house on Bennington Street is empty, the man reported. They cleared out 2 hours ago. Probably expected retaliation after making contact with Miss Chen. Find them, Dante said coldly. I want Alexei Volkov in front of me within 48 hours. Already have feelers out. He'll surface. The man's attention turned to Aria, his assessment quick and thorough. So this is the nurse who saved your life. Aria Chen, this is Luca Santoro, my second-in-command and oldest friend. Pleasure, Lucas said, though his tone suggested he was reserving judgment. How much does she know? Enough, Dante replied. And she's under my protection. Make sure everyone understands that. Already done. Word went out an hour ago. Luca pulled out his phone, showing Dante something that made his jaw tighten. The Russians are talking. They're claiming you're vulnerable, that nearly dying has made you weak. Some of our younger members are getting nervous. Then I'll remind everyone why that's a mistake. Dante stood, the movement controlled despite the obvious pain. Call a meeting. Tomorrow night. All senior members. You're not ready for tomorrow night, Luca. The two men stared at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Luca nodded. I'll set it up, but you're bringing your nurse. If you're going to convince everyone you're not weak, they need to see the woman who saved you. He looked at Aria. Welcome to the family, Miss Chen. Try not to get killed. He left. Aria sat frozen, processing what she just heard. He wants me at a meeting with your organization. Her voice came out higher than intended. I'm just a nurse. I don't know anything about your world. Exactly. You're outside of all the politics and power plays. You saved my life because it was the right thing to do, not because you wanted something from me. Dante moved around the desk, sitting in the chair beside hers, instead of behind the barrier of authority. In my world, that kind of purity is so rare it's practically mythical. Showing them why I'm protecting you, will mean more than any display of strength I could make. I don't want to be a symbol. I know. But right now, you're the proof that I'm still the man they follow. That nearly dying didn't change my judgment or my priorities. His hand found hers, the touch warm and grounding. I wouldn't ask if there was another way. But I need them to see you, to understand why you matter. Why do I matter? The question burned on her tongue, but she wasn't ready to hear the answer. Wasn't ready to acknowledge the thing that had been building between them since that first moment in the ER. Okay, she said instead. I'll go to your meeting. But after that, after the situation with the Russians is resolved, I need to go back to my life. My job, my apartment, my mother. I can't live in hiding forever. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Pain, maybe. Or resignation. Of course. Once you're safe, once this is handled, you're free to return to your life. He stood, the movement careful. Rosa will show you to your room. It's late, and you need rest. But as Aria followed Rosa upstairs to a guest suite that was more luxurious than any place she'd ever stayed, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever truly go back to normal. Her life had changed the moment Dante Moretti had been wheeled into her ER. And some part of her, the part that had memorized the exact shade of gray in his eyes, that had brought him sandwiches and worried about his recovery, didn't want it to go back. The guest suite was beautiful. A large bedroom with an attached bathroom, both decorated in soft blues and creams. French doors opened onto a small balcony overlooking the garden. Her duffel bag had been unpacked, her clothes hanging in the closet, her toiletries arranged in the bathroom. Aria should have felt invaded by the efficiency of it. Instead, she felt cared for. She showered, washing away the terror of the evening, and changed into the sleep shirt that had been laid out on the bed. When she finally crawled under covers that were sinfully soft, exhaustion crashed over her. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard that Russian voice, heard the casual threat against her mother, felt the weight of the danger she'd stumbled into. Around 2 a.m, she gave up. Wrapped in a robe she found hanging in the bathroom, Aria slipped out of her room and down the stairs. Maybe warm milk or chamomile tea would help. Maybe she'd find something to read in Dante's library. She found him instead. He sat in the darkened living room, illuminated only by the city lights filtering through tall windows. He still wore the same clothes from earlier, hadn't changed or gone to bed. His head was tilted back against the sofa, eyes closed, one hand pressed carefully against his abdomen. "Can't sleep either?" Aria asked softly, not wanting to startle him. His eyes opened. In the low light, they looked almost silver. "Pain won't let me. I refused the prescription narcotics they sent home with me." "Why?" She moved closer, her nurse instincts overriding everything else. "You're 4 days post-op. You need pain management. Narcotics make me vulnerable, cloud my judgment. I can't afford that right now." "You can't afford to damage your healing tissue either." Aria sat beside him, close enough to see the lines of pain around his eyes. "Let me check your incision." "Aria, I'm a nurse. You're my patient. Let me check." For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he lifted his shirt, revealing the bandage covering his surgical site. Aria examined it carefully, her fingers gentle as she checked for signs of infection or bleeding. The incision looked good, clean, healing properly. But the surrounding tissue was inflamed, tender when she pressed lightly. "You're overdoing it," she said firmly. Standing, walking around, planning meetings. "Your body needs rest to heal." "I don't have the luxury of rest right now." "Then you have the luxury of proper pain management." She stood. "Where are your medications?" "Kitchen counter." "But Aria, I'm not taking." "You're taking ibuprofen at minimum. It'll reduce inflammation and manage pain without clouding your judgment." She found the bottles Rosa had left out, checked the dosages, and returned with pills and water. "Take these. Now." Dante looked at her for a long moment, something like amusement flickering in his expression. Then he took the pills, swallowing them obediently. "Satisfied?" "Not until you promise to actually rest tomorrow instead of planning war strategies." "I can't promise that." "Then I'll follow you around all day making sure you don't rupture your incision." "Is that a threat?" "It's a nurse's promise." He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his whole face. "You're bossy. You're stubborn. We're well matched." The words came out before she could stop them, carrying implications she hadn't meant to voice. The laughter faded. Dante's expression shifted to something intense, focused entirely on her. "Aria!" Her name on his lips was almost a caress. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "From the moment you told me to stop being tough and let you help me, something changed. You looked at me, really looked, and you didn't flinch. Didn't see the Moretti name, or the reputation, or the danger. You saw a person who needed help, and you gave it without hesitation." His hand found hers, fingers threading together. "I've spent my entire life being defined by what I am. The eldest son, the heir, the weapon my father sharpened for his purposes. But you see someone else when you look at me. Someone who could be more than just violence and power." "Dante, let me finish." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I know this is complicated. I know I've dragged you into danger. I know you should run as far from me as possible. But I need you to understand that protecting you isn't just obligation. It's not just me covering my debts. It's because the thought of anyone hurting you makes me willing to burn this entire city down." Aria's heart hammered, so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was too much, too fast, too intense. She barely knew this man. 4 days in a hospital and 1 night in his home didn't constitute the foundation for whatever he was suggesting. But when she looked into his gray eyes and saw the raw honesty there, the vulnerability he was offering despite every instinct that probably told him to maintain distance, she couldn't deny the pull between them. "This is insane," she whispered. "I know. We barely know each other. I know. You're a crime lord. I'm a nurse. We live in completely different worlds. I know. His hand tightened on hers. But none of that changes what I feel. What I've felt since you walked into my hospital room and saw me instead of my reputation. What do you feel? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. That you're the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to me, Dante said quietly. Because you make me want things I've never let myself want. A normal life. Someone who sees me as human. A future that's more than just survival and obligation. Aria should have pulled away. Should have reminded him, and herself, that this was temporary. That once the Russian situation was resolved, she'd go back to her life. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. I feel it too, she admitted. This pull between us. It terrifies me, but I can't deny it. Then don't. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Don't deny it. Don't run from it. Just let it exist, and we'll figure out the rest together. He was going to kiss her. Aria could see the intention in his eyes, feel it in the way he leaned forward carefully, mindful of his injury but unable to stop himself. And she was going to let him. Their lips met softly, tentatively. Testing. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head for better access. The kiss deepened, all the tension of the past 4 days finding release. Aria's hands found his chest, careful to avoid his wounded side, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. The heart she'd helped save, the man she'd chosen to trust despite every warning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante pressed his forehead to hers. Stay, he whispered. Not just until this is resolved. Stay with me. Let me show you that this could work. Dante, I know I'm asking for something impossible, but I've spent my entire life doing what was expected, being what my family needed, never allowing myself to want anything for myself. And then you walked into my life and showed me what I've been missing. Don't take that away. Not yet. Aria knew this was a mistake. Knew she was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Knew that getting involved with Dante Moretti would change everything about her carefully constructed life. But looking into his gray eyes, seeing the hope and vulnerability there, she couldn't bring herself to say no. Okay, she breathed. I'll stay. For now. We'll see what happens. Relief and something fiercer flashed across his face. He kissed her again, deeper this time, with a hunger that spoke of weeks of watching her, wanting her, forcing himself to maintain distance. They stayed on that sofa as night deepened into early morning, talking quietly about nothing and everything. Dante told her about growing up in his family, the weight of expectations, the violence he'd witnessed and participated in. Aria told him about nursing school, about her mother's diagnosis, about the fear and helplessness that had defined the past 2 years. They fell asleep there, tangled together on the sofa. Dante's arms around her, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. When Rosa found them in the morning, she just smiled, draped a blanket over them both, and quietly closed the living room doors. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The next day passed in a strange, suspended reality. Aria checked Dante's incision in the morning, healing well, though still tender. She forced him to rest, actually rest, on the sofa while she read beside him. Rosa brought meals. Luca stopped by twice with updates about the search for Alexei Volkov and preparations for the evening's meeting. Aria called the hospital, explaining she had a family emergency and needed a few days off. Her supervisor, thank God, didn't ask too many questions. She called her mother, too, keeping her voice light and normal, not mentioning any of the chaos. You sound happy, her mother observed. Is there someone special? Maybe, Aria admitted, glancing at Dante, who was watching her with those intense gray eyes. It's new, complicated, but maybe. Good. You deserve happiness, sweetheart. You spent too long taking care of everyone else. After the call ended, Dante pulled her back down beside him. Your mother sounds wonderful. She is. She's the strongest person I know. Beat cancer through sheer stubbornness. Runs in the family then. Aria laughed, the sound surprising her. Despite everything, the danger, the threats, the absolute insanity of her situation, she felt lighter than she had in years. "Tell me about tonight," she said. "This meeting. What should I expect?" Dante's expression grew serious. "It's a formal gathering of all senior members of the Moretti organization. About 30 people total. They'll want to assess whether I'm still capable of leading, especially after nearly dying. And my presence proves you are. Your presence proves I still have the judgment and strength to protect what's mine, that I'm not weakened or vulnerable." His hand found hers. "They'll ask questions. Some might be hostile. Just stay close to me. Answer honestly if they speak to you directly, and remember that you're safer in that room than anywhere else in the city." "Why?" "Because anyone who threatens you in front of me signs their own death warrant. They know that." The casual way he said it should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel protected in a way she'd never experienced. That evening, Aria dressed carefully in clothing Rosa had somehow procured, a simple black dress that was elegant without being flashy. Understated but expensive. She pulled her hair back in a neat bun, applied minimal makeup, and studied herself in the mirror. She looked like someone who belonged in Dante's world. Polished. Controlled. Nothing like the exhausted nurse who'd worked 16-hour shifts to pay off student loans. Dante was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, wearing a dark suit that fit him perfectly despite the healing wound beneath. He'd shaved, his dark hair combed back, and he looked every inch the powerful man he was. "You're beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. "You're not supposed to be standing this much. I'll rest after the meeting. Promise." They drove to a restaurant in the north end, Moretti's, naturally. The place was closed to the public, but lights blazed from inside. As they entered, conversation died. 30 pairs of eyes turned to assess them. Dante's hand was steady at the small of her back, guiding her forward with absolute confidence. They walked to a long table at the center of the room, and he pulled out a chair for her before taking his own seat at the head. Luca sat to his right, his expression unreadable. The other faces ranged from curious to openly hostile. "Thank you all for coming," Dante began, his voice carrying through the room with natural authority. "I know there's been concern about my condition, about what happened 6 nights ago. So let me address it directly." He stood, slowly but steadily. "I was ambushed by Russian soldiers attempting to end the territory dispute by ending me. They failed. I survived because I was brought to Boston General Hospital, where the staff, particularly Nurse Aria Chen, saved my life." His hand gestured to her. Miss Chen had no idea who I was when she treated me. She didn't know about our family or our business. She just saw someone who needed help and provided it with skill and compassion. And when I recovered enough to understand the danger I'd put her in simply by surviving in her I did what any of you would do. I protected her. The Russians have made threats against Miss Chen and her family. They've attempted to use her as leverage. So I've brought her under our protection, and I'm making it clear to everyone in this room and everyone in this city, she is mine to protect. Anyone who threatens her answers to me personally. The silence that followed was absolute. Then an older man at the far end of the table spoke up. "With respect, Dante, you're asking us to potentially go to war with the Bratva over a woman you've known for less than a week. I'm not asking. I'm telling you how this is." Dante's voice went cold. "Miss Chen saved my life when she could have let me die. That debt is absolute. And more than that, she's shown me something I'd forgotten. That there are still people in this world who act out of genuine goodness instead of calculation." He looked around the table. "Some of you are wondering if nearly dying has made me weak. If I've lost the edge needed to lead. Let me be very clear. I'm more dangerous now than I was before. Because now I have something to protect beyond just business and territory. I have someone who matters, and I will destroy anyone who threatens her." Another man spoke up. "The Russians claim you're vulnerable, that they can push into our territory while you recover. Then let them try." Dante's smile was sharp and cold. "Alexei Volkov will be found within 48 hours. When he is, I'll have a conversation with him that will make very clear the cost of threatening what's mine. After that conversation, the Bratva will either back off completely or face full retaliation. And if they choose retaliation, then we remind them why the Moretti family has controlled this city for 40 years. The tension in the room was palpable. Aria sat frozen, Understanding that she was watching something crucial, Dante reasserting his authority, proving his strength despite his injury. Luca stood, his support obvious. I've seen the intelligence on Russian movements. They're overextended, pushing too hard too fast. One strong response will collapse their expansion. Dante's right, we hit them now, hit them hard and they'll retreat. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. The older man who'd spoken first nodded slowly. Then we support the decision. Miss Chen is under family protection. The Russians will be dealt with. But Dante, you need to actually recover. We can't have you tearing your stitches open during a confrontation. Agreed? Dante's hand found Aria's shoulder, the touch grounding. Which is why I have the best possible medical care right in my home. After the meeting ended, various members approached to introduce themselves. They were curious about her, Aria realized, assessing whether she was worthy of their boss's protection. She answered their questions honestly. Yes, she was a nurse. No, she hadn't known who Dante was when she treated him. Yes, she understood the seriousness of the situation. One woman, perhaps 40 with sharp eyes and elegant bearing, studied Aria with particular intensity. I'm Gabriella Moretti, she introduced herself. Dante's aunt. I ran our legitimate businesses. It's nice to meet you. Is it? Gabriella's smile didn't reach her eyes. You disrupted quite a lot, Miss Chen. Caused ripples throughout the organization. I didn't mean to. I'm sure you didn't. But intentions matter less than consequences in our world. She leaned closer. My nephew is powerful but not invincible. The last woman who got close to him ended up dead because enemies saw her as a weakness to exploit. Are you prepared for that reality? Ice flooded Aria's veins. What happened to her? Car bomb. Meant for Dante, but she was driving his car that day. 3 years ago. Gabriella's expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to scare you away, Miss Chen. I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're walking into. Dante cares about you. That's obvious. But in our world, being cared about by someone powerful comes with a very high cost. Before Aria could respond, Dante was there, his hand finding hers. Aunt Gabriella, are you frightening my guest? Merely educating her. Gabriella kissed his cheek. Take care of yourself, nephew. And take care of her. Don't make the same mistakes as before. After she left, Aria turned to Dante. Who was she talking about? The woman who died? Pain flickered across his face. Her name was Isabella. We'd been together for 6 months. I thought I was being careful, keeping her separate from the business. But someone, we never found out who, planted a bomb in my car. She borrowed it to run errands while I was in meetings. His jaw tightened. She died instantly. And I learned that there's no such thing as keeping people separate when you're in my position. Everything you care about becomes a target. Is that why you've kept your distance? Why you said you couldn't afford to want things? Yes. After Isabella, I swore I wouldn't let anyone get close again. Wouldn't give my enemies that kind of leverage. He turned to face her fully. But then you walked into my life and made me remember what it feels like to want someone. To see a future that's more than just obligation and survival. Dante, I know it's dangerous. I know loving me could get you killed. But I can't walk away from this from you. All I can do is promise that I'll protect you better than I protected her. That I'll be more vigilant, more careful, more ruthless with anyone who threatens you. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. This wasn't a casual attraction or a temporary fascination. This was something deeper, something that frightened them both but couldn't be denied. I'm scared, Aria admitted. Of this, of you, of what being with you means. I know. I'm scared too. But I'm not running. Relief and something fiercer flashed across his face. Neither am I. They left the restaurant together, Dante's hand steady at her back, both of them aware that they'd crossed a line tonight. This wasn't just protection anymore. This wasn't just gratitude or obligation. This was something real, something permanent, something that would change both their lives forever. And despite the danger, despite the threats, despite every logical reason to walk away, neither of them wanted to. The next morning, Aria woke to sunlight streaming through the guest room windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back. The meeting, Dante's declaration, Gabriella's warning about the woman who died. She showered and dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, both waiting in her closet as if Rosa had known exactly what she'd need. Downstairs, she found the kitchen empty except for a note in elegant handwriting. Astra's coffee's ready. Dante's in his study taking a call. Rosa's at the market. Make yourself at home. Our Aria poured coffee and wandered through the brownstone, seeing it properly for the first time in daylight. Every room was beautiful but lived in. Books everywhere, worn spines suggesting they'd actually been read. Family photos on shelves and walls. A younger Dante with what must have been his parents. Groups of relatives gathered around tables laden with food. She found herself in front of one particular photo. Dante, maybe 23 or 24, his arm around a beautiful woman with dark curls and a bright smile. Isabella, she realized. The woman who died in his place. That was taken 2 weeks before she died. Aria turned. Dante stood in the doorway, still wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair tousled from sleep. He looked younger like this, more vulnerable. You loved her, Aria said quietly. I did. Not the way He stopped, correcting himself. I cared about her deeply. She was kind, funny, understood that my life was complicated. But we'd only been together 6 months. It wasn't. He moved closer. It wasn't what I feel when I look at you. Dante, it's been less than a week. I know. And that should terrify me. It does terrify me. But I can't change how I feel. His hand found hers. I know this is moving too fast. I know you need time to process everything. But I also know that wasting time on pretense or distance is pointless when we both feel it. Aria wanted to argue, to slow things down, to be rational and careful. Instead, she found herself asking, what do you feel? Like I've been waiting my entire life for you to walk into it. Like you're the first real thing I've experienced in years of violence and calculation. Like protecting you isn't obligation, it's necessity. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Like I could fall in love with you without even trying. Her breath caught. Could. Am falling. Have fallen. Pick your tense, they're all true. This was insane. Aria had known this man for 6 days. Had been in his home for less than 48 hours. This wasn't how real relationships developed. This was the intensity of trauma bonding, of adrenaline, and danger creating false intimacy. Except nothing about it felt false. I'm scared, she admitted, of how much I already care about you, of how easily I could fall completely, of what that means for my life, my career, everything I've built. I know, and I won't push. We'll go as slow as you need. But the situation with the Russians will be handled within days. Alexei Volkov will be found. I'll have a conversation with him that makes very clear the cost of threatening you. And then you'll be free to go back to your life if that's what you choose. And if I don't choose that, Dante's expression shifted to something raw and hopeful. Then we figure out what this is together. Take our time. Let it develop naturally. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people seeing if what they feel can turn into something real. Before Aria could respond, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Luca! They found Volkov. Already. He wasn't hiding well. Arrogant. Dante was already moving toward his study, his tone shifting to business mode. I need to handle this today. The longer he thinks he can operate freely, the bolder he'll become. Aria followed him into the study, watching as he made rapid calls, issued orders, transformed from the vulnerable man, discussing feelings to the crime lord commanding an organization. I'm coming with you, she said when he ended the last call. Absolutely not. This isn't. If this is about me, about threats made against me and my mother, then I deserve to be there when it's resolved. Aria, this is going to be violent. I'm not just having a conversation. I'm sending a message that will be very clear and very bloody. I'm a nurse. I've seen blood. Not like this. His expression was hard. Not when it's deliberate, calculated violence meant to terrorize. That's different from treating injuries in an ER. She knew he was right, knew that witnessing whatever he was planning would change how she saw him, would make the danger of his world visceral instead of abstract. But she also knew she couldn't hide from the reality of who he was. I need to see it, she said firmly. I need to understand what protecting me really means. What you're willing to do. If we're going to have any chance at something real, I can't live in denial about your world. Dante studied her for a long moment, reading something in her expression that made him nod slowly. Okay, but you stay in the car with Marcus. You watch through the security feed, but you don't come inside. And if at any point it's too much, if you need to leave, you tell Marcus and he drives you straight back here. Agreed? Agreed? 2 hours later, Aria sat in the back of an SUV outside a warehouse in South Boston, watching events unfold on a tablet that showed multiple camera angles. Dante had gone inside with Luca and 6 other men, all armed, all moving with military precision. The warehouse interior was vast and empty except for a single chair in the center. Alexei Volkov sat bound to that chair, his face already showing signs of a beating. 2 of his own men knelt nearby, also restrained. Dante walked into frame, his movements controlled despite his healing wound. He changed into dark clothing that wouldn't show blood, and his expression was cold in a way Aria had never seen. Alexei Volkov, Dante's voice came through the tablet speakers, clearly. You made a mistake 6 nights ago when you had your soldier shoot me. You made a bigger mistake when you threatened Nurse Aria Chen and her mother. She saved your life. Alexei spat, his accent thick. That makes her involved. Fair target. Fair target. Dante's laugh was devoid of humor. Let me explain something about fair targets. Aria Chen is a civilian. A nurse who did her job. She had no knowledge of who I was, no involvement in our business, no connection to any of this beyond basic human decency. Targeting her isn't strategy, it's cowardice. He moved closer to Alexei, his presence dominating the space. You want to come after me? Fine. That's business. But the second you threatened an innocent woman and her sick mother, you violated every rule that keeps this city from descending into chaos. And now you're going to learn the consequences of that violation. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Dante didn't do the violence himself. His injury prevented that, but he orchestrated it with cold precision. His men worked on Alexei and his soldiers with methodical purpose, each act calculated to send a specific message. Aria watched it all, forcing herself not to look away even when her stomach turned. This was the reality of Dante's world. This was what protection looked like from the inside. After 15 minutes that felt like hours, Dante held up a hand and the violence stopped. Alexei was barely conscious, his face a mess of blood and broken bones. You're going to deliver a message to your organization, Dante said, crouching down to Alexei's level. Aria Chen and her mother are completely off limits. Any member of the Bratva who even looks at them wrong will end up in pieces. The territory dispute is over. You're pulling back to your original boundaries. And if I ever hear your organization targeting civilians again, we won't stop at sending a message. We'll dismantle your entire operation piece by piece. Do you understand? Alexei managed a nod. Good. You have 24 hours to get out of Boston. If you're still in the city after that, my people will find you and finish what we started today. Dante stood, looking down at the broken man with no visible emotion. Then he and his men walked out, leaving Alexei and his soldiers bound but alive. In the car, Aria sat in stunned silence as Dante climbed in beside her. Up close, she could see blood spatter on his shirt, could smell the violence that clung to him. His expression was still cold, still hard, nothing like the gentle man who'd held her on the sofa. Say something, he said quietly, watching her face. That was... She struggled for words. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. I know. You were so calm, so controlled, like it was routine. It is routine. His jaw tightened. This is what I am, Aria. This is the world I exist in. Violence isn't occasional, it's constant. And I'm very, very good at it. She should have been horrified. Should have asked Marcus to take her home immediately, to her apartment, to her old life. Instead, she found herself analyzing what she'd witnessed with the same clinical detachment she used in the ER. You didn't kill them, she observed. You could have. That would have sent a stronger message. But you let them live. Because killing them would have started a war. This way, they're humiliated but alive. The Bratva leadership will see that I'm still strong enough to dominate their people but reasonable enough to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. It's more effective than murder. You calculated all of that. Every move. Every word. This isn't about emotion or revenge. It's about control. About sending the exact right message to maintain balance. Aria turned to look at him fully. The cold expression was cracking now, vulnerability seeping through. He was waiting for her judgment, she realized. Waiting for her to recoil in horror or demand to be taken away from him. I'm not going to lie and say that wasn't disturbing, she said carefully. Because it was, but I also understand why it was necessary. Those men threatened my mother. They threatened me. You did what you had to do to protect us and to prevent further escalation. You're not horrified? Oh, I'm absolutely horrified. That level of violence, that calculated cruelty, it's the opposite of everything I do as a nurse. Everything I believe in. She took his hand, finding it warm despite the coldness of what he'd just done. But I'm not horrified by you. I'm horrified by the world that made that necessary. There's a difference. Something in his expression broke. He pulled her against him, holding her tightly, his face buried in her hair. I thought you'd run, he whispered. Thought you'd see what I really am, and realize you can't be with someone capable of that. You are capable of that, but you're also capable of tenderness and vulnerability and care. Both things are true. She pulled back to meet his eyes. I'm not naive, Dante. I know what you do, what your life requires. And yes, it scares me, but walking away from you scares me more. He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and full of everything he couldn't say. In the back seat of an SUV parked outside a warehouse where he just brutalized 3 men, they held each other and made a choice that would change everything. Over the next week, a new routine established itself. The Russians pulled back, their territory dispute abandoned. Alexei Volkov left Boston on a flight to Moscow within 18 hours of his encounter with Dante. The threats against Aria and her mother evaporated as if they'd never existed. Aria returned to work at the hospital, but with discreet security that followed her movements. She visited her mother daily, relieved to see Sarah thriving with no knowledge of the danger that had surrounded them both. And she stayed at Dante's brownstone. Not officially. She still had her apartment in Dorchester, still paid rent on a place she barely visited. But every night, she found herself in his home, in his bed, tangled in his arms. They learned each other slowly. Dante taught her about his world, explaining the politics and power dynamics that govern Boston's underworld. Aria taught him about medicine, about the satisfaction of helping people heal. He came to the hospital sometimes, sitting in the ER waiting room just to watch her work. She'd catch glimpses of him between patients, his gray eyes tracking her movements with unmistakable pride and affection. Your boyfriend is here again, Kayla, one of the other ER nurses, would tease. The scary hot one, who tips the coffee cart guy $50 just for being near your section. Aria had introduced them carefully. Dante Moretti, her boyfriend, deliberately vague about how they'd met. Most of the staff didn't recognize the name or chose not to comment if they did. But a few understood exactly who he was, and their caution around Aria shifted to something like respect. Dr. Martinez pulled her aside one day during a quiet moment. You're seeing him seriously, she observed. The gunshot victim from 3 weeks ago. Yes. Aria, I meant what I said before. Men like him are dangerous. I know, but they're also human, and he's been nothing but respectful and protective. She met Dr. Martinez's eyes. I know what I'm doing, or at least I'm trying to figure it out as I go. Just be careful. Please. You're one of our best nurses, and I don't want to lose you to violence that has nothing to do with you. But it did have to do with her now. That was the reality Aria was slowly accepting. Being with Dante meant accepting that danger was constant, that threats could materialize from nowhere, that the man she was falling for had enemies who would see her as a weakness to exploit. It meant learning to shoot, which Dante insisted on. They spent hours at a private range, his hands guiding hers, teaching her proper form and safety. I don't want you to ever need this, he said, watching her hit the target with increasing accuracy. But I need to know you can protect yourself if something happens and I'm not there. It meant understanding the security protocols, always telling Marcus where she was going, never deviating from planned routes, recognizing the signs of surveillance or threat. It meant watching Dante leave for meetings or business and wondering if he'd come back injured or worse. But it also meant stolen mornings in bed, his arms around her, talking about nothing and everything. It meant cooking together in his kitchen, Dante teaching her his mother's recipes while telling stories about growing up in the Moretti family. It meant quiet evenings on his terrace, watching the city lights and feeling safer than she'd ever felt before. 1 month after the night she texted him for help, Aria woke to find Dante already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "I've been thinking about something my aunt said at the meeting. About how being cared about by someone powerful comes with a high cost." Aria's stomach clenched. This was it. The moment he'd tell her it was too dangerous, that they needed to end things before someone got hurt. "I've spent the past month trying to figure out how to keep you safe while also being with you. How to have what I want without putting you at risk. And I realized something." "What?" "There is no way to completely eliminate the risk. As long as I'm who I am, as long as I do what I do, anyone I care about will be in some degree of danger. I can minimize it, mitigate it, surround you with protection. But I can't make it disappear completely." He took her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her palm. "So I'm giving you a choice. A real choice, with full understanding of what you're choosing. You can walk away right now. Go back to your apartment, your normal life, your career without complications. I'll maintain security until I'm certain no residual threats exist. But otherwise, I'll leave you alone. Or you can stay, accept the danger and the complications, and build a life with me anyway." Aria's heart pounded. This was the moment of truth, the choice that would define everything that came after. "If I stay," she said carefully, "what does that look like? Realistically." "It looks like you moving in here officially. Like enhanced security that never goes away. Like knowing that my enemies will always see you as potential leverage. Like being part of a world that most people only see in movies." He paused. "But it also looks like waking up next to you every morning. Like building something real together. Like having a partner who sees me as human instead of just a weapon or a name. Like being happy in ways I didn't think were possible." "You're asking me to marry you?" The words came out more surprised than she'd intended. "Not yet. I'm asking you to choose this life consciously, to move from temporary to permanent, to be my partner in every sense of the word." His gray eyes held hers. "The marriage proposal will come later, when you're absolutely certain this is what you want. But I need to know now if you're willing to try." Aria thought about everything that had happened in the past month. The terror of that first night, the violence at the warehouse, the constant low-level fear of what being with Dante meant. But she also thought about the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. The way he listened when she talked about her patients, genuinely interested in her work. The way he protected her mother without asking for anything in return. The way he made her laugh with dark humor and held her through nightmares, and saw her as someone worth protecting at any cost. She thought about Isabella, the woman who died in his place. About Gabriella's warning. About all the very real dangers that came with loving someone like Dante Moretti. And she made her choice. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "Not because I'm naive about the risks. Not because I think love conquers all or that we won't face serious challenges. But because walking away from you feels impossible now. Because I've never felt as seen or valued or protected as I do with you. Because I want to find out what we could build together." Relief and joy flooded his expression. He pulled her close, kissing her with the kind of intensity that made the rest of the world disappear. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I've loved you since you told me to stop being tough and let you help me. Since you saw past everything I am to who I could be." "I love you too," Aria admitted, "even though it's terrifying and complicated and probably insane. I love you." They stayed in bed for hours, tangled together, talking about logistics and plans and what their future might look like. Aria would keep working at the hospital, Dante insisted, knowing how much her career meant to her. They'd maintain enhanced security, but try to keep her life as normal as possible. Eventually, when things were more settled, they'd make their relationship public beyond just his inner circle. "I want to meet your mother properly," Dante said. "Not just a brief visit at the facility. A real meeting where she understands who I am and what I do. She's going to have questions, concerns. I know, and I'll answer honestly. She deserves to know exactly what her daughter is getting into. 2 days later, they arranged for Sarah to come to the brownstone for lunch. Aria's mother was recovered enough now to leave the facility for extended periods, and she'd been asking to see where Aria was spending so much time. Rosa prepared an elaborate meal. Dante was nervous in a way Aria had never seen before, adjusting his shirt 3 times, checking that everything was perfect. You face down Russian criminals with less anxiety, Aria observed, amused. Russian criminals don't get to judge whether I'm good enough for the woman I love. When Sarah arrived, she took in the brownstone with a nurse's observant eye, noting the security cameras, the obvious wealth, the careful way Dante's men positioned themselves around the building. Over lunch, Dante was honest. He explained his family, his business, the violence and danger that came with his world. He told her about the threats against Aria, about how he protected her and her mother both. Sarah listened to everything, her expression neutral. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Moretti, I appreciate your honesty, and I understand that you care about my daughter. But I need to ask you something directly. Can you guarantee her safety? No, Dante said without hesitation. I can provide more protection than most people could dream of. I can make anyone who threatens her regret that choice. But I can't guarantee she'll never be at risk. That would be a lie, and your daughter deserves better than lies. At least you're honest. Sarah turned to Aria. And you, sweetheart? You understand what you're accepting by being with him. I do, Mom. I've seen his world firsthand. It's dangerous and complicated, but it's also real. He's real. And I love him. Sarah studied them both for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Your father would have had an opinion about this. He'd have wanted to protect you from danger, wanted you to choose safety. She reached across the table to take both their hands. But he also would have recognized what I see, that you two love each other. That this man would burn the world down to keep you safe. That's not nothing. Mrs. Chen, Dante started, but she cut him off. Call me Sarah. And understand this, my daughter is the most important person in my world. If anything happens to her because of your life, because of choices you make or enemies you have, I will find a way to make you regret it. Mother's promise. Dante's lips twitched. I believe you. And I promise you, Sarah, protecting Aria is my top priority. Not just because I love her, but because she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I won't let her get hurt. After Sarah left, Aria found Dante on the terrace, staring out at the city. Your mother is terrifying, he observed. She likes you. That was her approval disguised as a threat. How could you tell? She called you Dante. If she didn't approve, it would have stayed Mr. Moretti the entire time. Aria wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. She sees what I see, someone who's dangerous but not evil. Someone who would do anything to protect the people they love. I would. His hands covered hers. I'd do anything for you, Aria. Anything to keep you safe and happy. I know. That's why I'm staying. Over the following months, their life together found its rhythm. Aria officially moved into the brownstone, her apartment in Dorchester given up. Her belongings mixed with Dante's, her nursing textbooks on his bookshelves, her photos added to his family pictures on the walls. She continued working at the hospital, building her career. Dante supported every goal, every ambition. When she expressed interest in specializing in oncology nursing, he connected her with the best programs, ensured she had time and resources to pursue additional training. He attended hospital fundraisers with her, his presence causing ripples but his behavior impeccable. He donated generously to the ER, to cancer research, to programs Sarah suggested. His legitimate business interests expanded, money from questionable sources being laundered into legal enterprises. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when Dante came home with blood on his clothes and couldn't talk about what had happened. Times when Aria had to be rushed to a safe location because of a potential threat. Arguments about the level of security she needed, about how much independence was reasonable. But there were also mornings waking up in his arms. Evenings cooking together, his mother's recipes becoming their shared tradition. Quiet moments on the terrace watching the city, feeling connected in ways that transcended words. 6 months after the night she texted him for help, Dante took her back to the hospital where they'd met. Not the ER, They walked to the trauma wing, to the room where she'd first taken care of him. "This is where it started," he said quietly. "Where you saved my life and changed everything. It's just a hospital room. It's the place where I met the woman I'm going to marry." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that took her breath away. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light perfectly. "Aria Chen, will you marry me? Will you choose this complicated, dangerous, imperfect life with me permanently? Will you be my partner in everything, the person who sees me when everyone else just sees the Moretti name?" Aria looked at the ring, at Dante's hopeful gray eyes, at the hospital room where she'd first told him to stop being tough and let her help. She thought about everything that had happened since that night, the terror and violence and danger, but also the love and protection and genuine partnership they built. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, kissing her with a kind of joy that made her heart soar. They stayed in that hospital room for a long time, holding each other, talking about their future. When they finally left, walking hand in hand through the halls where she'd worked for years, Aria felt something settle in her chest. Peace, certainty, the knowledge that she'd made the right choice. Her life would never be simple or safe. Being married to Dante Moretti meant accepting constant vigilance, potential danger, complications that most people never faced. But it also meant being loved with an intensity and devotion that most people never experienced. It meant having a partner who saw her completely and chose her anyway. It meant building something real from the chaos and finding happiness in unexpected places. As they drove back to the brownstone, back home, Aria looked at the ring on her finger and smiled. She'd saved Dante's life that night in the ER, but he'd saved her too, in ways she was only beginning to understand. And together, they'd build something worth protecting, something dangerous and beautiful and entirely their own. The wedding took place 6 months later in the brownstone's garden, small and intimate. Sarah walked Aria down the makeshift aisle, her cancer still in remission, her smile radiant. Luca stood as Dante's best man, no longer assessing Aria as a potential weakness but accepting her as family. Rosa cried through the entire ceremony. Gabriella, Dante's aunt, gave Aria her blessing. "You're stronger than Isabella was. You understand his world and choose him anyway. That's what he needs." As Aria and Dante exchanged vows, promises to protect and love and choose each other every single day, she felt the weight of what she was accepting and the joy of what she was gaining in equal measure. When Dante kissed her as his wife, when the small gathering applauded, when they walked back down the aisle together as partners in every sense, Aria knew with absolute certainty that this was right. Her life had changed the moment a gunshot victim had been wheeled into her ER. The moment she'd chosen to save a stranger's life without knowing who he was or what he'd become to her. She'd walked into danger without realizing it, had stumbled into love without planning for it, had found home in the most unexpected place, in the arms of a man who was both terrifying and tender, both dangerous and devoted. The reception flowed into evening, Italian food and wine and laughter. Dante's family welcomed her without reservation. His world, which had seemed so foreign and frightening, had become hers too. Later, when the guests had left and they stood alone on the terrace watching the city lights, Dante pulled her close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing past what I am to who I could be. For choosing this life when you could have run. For loving me despite everything that makes me difficult to love." "You're not difficult to love," Aria said, turning to face him. "You're complex and dangerous and yes, sometimes scary. But you're also kind and protective and you make me feel valued in ways no one else ever has. Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. Even with all the complications, especially with all the complications, because they're part of who you are, part of what makes us work." They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. A nurse and a crime lord, a healer and someone who dealt in controlled violence. Opposites that somehow fit perfectly. Below them, Boston hummed with life. Somewhere out there, people were making choices that would lead to joy or danger, or love in unexpected places. Somewhere, someone was walking into a hospital not knowing their life was about to change forever. Aria and Dante had walked that path, had found each other when neither was looking. had built something real from chaos and danger and impossible circumstances. And standing there on their wedding night, wrapped in each other's arms with their future stretching ahead, they knew they'd do it all again. Every choice, every risk, every moment of fear and joy. Because some love stories don't begin with safety or sense. They begin with a stranger on a gurney and a nurse brave enough to see past danger to the human beneath. They begin with a single text for help and someone who answers without hesitation. They begin with two people choosing each other despite every reason not to. And those stories, complicated and dangerous and absolutely real, are the ones worth telling. The ones worth living. The ones that last forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.